Welcome to Glisso English. Real life stories.
Have you ever received a bill so shocking that you had to read it twice just to believe it? In today's story, we follow a man who visits the emergency room for what seems like a minor health problem. The visit is quick, the treatment is simple, and he goes home thinking everything is fine. But a few weeks later, an envelope arrives in the mail, and inside is a $5,000 medical bill. Confused, stressed, and unsure what to do next, he begins a difficult journey, calling the hospital, questioning the charges, and trying to negotiate a payment plan before the bill destroys his financial stability. This real lifestyle story will help you improve your English listening, vocabulary, and speaking skills, while also showing an important life lesson about medical costs, communication, and standing up for yourself in stressful situations. As you listen, pay attention to useful English phrases, everyday vocabulary, and natural conversations that people use in real life. And at the end of the video, don't forget to check the quiz section to test your understanding of the story. Now, let's begin today's story, The Medical Bill Panic. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon when James opened his mailbox. Among the usual letters and flyers, one envelope immediately caught his eye. It was official-looking, thick, and had his name printed in bold letters. At first, he thought it might be from his bank or insurance company, but when he opened it, his heart skipped a beat. Inside was a letter from the hospital. James unfolded the pages carefully, expecting something routine, but as he scanned the numbers, his stomach dropped. $5,000. $5,000 for a visit that had seemed so simple. He remembered going to the emergency room only a few weeks ago. It was for a minor sprained ankle, nothing more. The doctor had checked him quickly, wrapped his ankle, and sent him home with instructions to rest and take some painkillers. James sat down on the edge of his couch, feeling a mix of shock, confusion, and anxiety. "How is this possible?" he whispered to himself. He reread the bill line by line. There were charges for the emergency room, the doctor's fee, some lab tests he didn't even remember, and an item called facility surcharge. Each line made no sense to him. His mind raced. How could a small sprain cost more than his rent for the month? He thought about his bank account, his bills, and the groceries he had to buy. Suddenly, a wave of panic washed over him. This was more than a financial problem. It felt overwhelming and unfair. James took a deep breath. He knew he had to do something, but where should he start? He grabbed his phone and opened his notes, ready to write down questions for the hospital. He knew one thing: he wasn't going to pay $5,000 without understanding every single charge. And that was the beginning of a journey that would test his patience, his communication skills, and his determination to handle one of life's unexpected financial emergencies. The next morning, James couldn't stop thinking about the bill. Every time he looked at his phone, he felt a knot in his stomach. How could a minor emergency room visit cost $5,000? He tried to remember exactly what happened that day. He had arrived at the hospital around 10 a.m., waited for maybe 30 minutes, and then a nurse had taken him to a small room. The doctor examined his ankle, asked a few questions, and wrapped it with a bandage. He even left before lunch, thinking it was a quick, simple visit. James replayed the scene in his mind again and again, hoping it would somehow make sense, but it didn't. The numbers on the bill were much higher than he expected, and he realized he had no idea how medical billing really worked. Terms like itemized charges, emergency facility fee, and physician consultation made him feel even more confused. He decided to call his friend Lisa, who had worked in an office that handled insurance claims. "Lisa," he said nervously, "I got a medical bill for $5,000 for a sprained ankle,
Am I going crazy, or is this normal? Lisa sighed on the other end of the line. Unfortunately, it's normal, she said. Emergency rooms can be expensive, even for minor issues. But don't panic yet. There are ways to question charges, negotiate, or even set up a payment plan. You just have to be organized and persistent. James felt a little relief hearing that. He realized that panic wouldn't solve anything. He needed a plan. First, he had to understand the bill, and then he could decide what to do next. He opened the envelope again and began highlighting every charge he didn't understand. Pen in hand, he started writing questions. Why is there a lab test I didn't have? What is the facility surcharge? Can I get a breakdown of these costs? By the end of the morning, James had a long list of questions ready. He felt nervous about calling the hospital, but he also felt a small sense of control. This was just the beginning of what would be a stressful, frustrating, but important lesson in standing up for himself and managing his finances. After making his list of questions, James finally gathered the courage to call the hospital billing department. He took a deep breath, dialed the number, and waited as the line rang. Every second felt like an eternity. When a calm voice finally answered, James introduced himself and explained the situation. "I received a bill for $5,000 for a visit to the emergency room a few weeks ago," he said. "I just want to understand these charges. Some of them don't seem right." The billing representative, a polite woman named Karen, asked him for some details and then said, "Let me go through the itemized bill with you." James listened carefully as she explained each charge. Some of it made sense, the doctor's consultation, the bandage, and the medications, but others, like the facility surcharge and a lab test he never remembered having, made him confused and frustrated. James politely asked, "Could you explain why I was charged for that lab test? I don't recall it being done." Karen checked her system and admitted it might have been an automatic charge for emergency visits. Sometimes certain tests are billed even if they aren't performed. I can submit a review to see if it can be removed. Hearing that, James felt a tiny bit of relief, but he knew he still had a long way to go. He also learned that hospital billing is complicated. Many charges are standard, even if you didn't actually use the service. It wasn't anyone's fault, it was just how the system worked. By the end of the call, James felt more informed, but still stressed. He had a clearer idea of what charges might be negotiable and which were fixed. He realized that understanding the bill was the first step toward controlling the situation. Sitting back in his chair, James thought about how easily a small health issue could turn into a financial nightmare. He promised himself that he wouldn't let fear or confusion stop him from getting the answers he needed. After his call with Karen, James felt slightly better, but he still had a lot of questions and doubts. He decided to do what most people do in stressful situations: search online for answers. He opened his laptop and typed $5,000 ER bill for minor injury into the search bar. Within seconds, he found forums, articles, and blog posts filled with stories just like his. People shared experiences about emergency room bills, unexpected charges, and how confusing hospital invoices could be. James learned that facility fees, administrative costs, and insurance coding often made small visits surprisingly expensive. Some people reported bills even higher than his, $7,000 or $10,000 for minor issues. Reading these stories made James feel a mix of shock and relief. Shock because the numbers were huge, and relief because he realized he wasn't alone. He also discovered that many people successfully negotiated their bills. Some had payment plans, some had certain charges reduced, and others even got mistakes corrected. James realized that the key was knowing your rights, asking questions, and being persistent. Armed with new knowledge, he created a strategy for himself. 1. Review the bill line by line and highlight questionable charges. 2. Gather supporting documents like doctor notes and receipts. 3. Call the hospital again and politely but firmly ask for explanations. 4. Ask about payment plans or financial assistance if necessary. James spent the evening reading, making notes, and practicing what he would say on his next call. He even wrote down useful phrases like, "Could you please explain this charge? Is there a payment plan available? Can this charge be reviewed or adjusted?" By the end of the night, James felt more confident and prepared. He realized that facing this challenge wasn't just about money. It was also about learning how to communicate effectively, stay organized, and take control of a stressful situation.
The next morning, James took a deep breath and dialed the hospital billing department again. This time, he felt more prepared. He had his questions ready, highlighted the suspicious charges, and even practiced the polite phrases he had learned from his online research. When Karen answered, James introduced himself calmly. "Hello, this is James. I received my emergency room bill, and I have a few questions about some of the charges. Could we go through them together?" Karen welcomed his questions and started reviewing the bill line by line. James noticed that when he asked specific questions about certain fees, Karen took the time to explain each one carefully. For example, the facility surcharge was a standard fee for the emergency room, and the lab test charge was actually a coding error. They hadn't run that test after all. James felt a small sense of victory. He asked, "Would it be possible to remove the incorrect lab test charge?" Karen typed something into her computer and said, "Yes, I have submitted it for review. It should be corrected in your next statement." Feeling encouraged, James also asked about payment options. He didn't want to pay $5,000 all at once. Karen explained that the hospital offered monthly payment plans, sometimes with low or no interest. James quickly did some mental calculations and realized that a monthly plan would be manageable. By the end of the call, James felt relieved and empowered. He had done something that seemed impossible just a few days ago. He had spoken up, asked questions, and started taking control of his financial situation. Sitting back, James reflected on the experience. The panic and confusion he had felt at first were understandable, but now he realized that knowledge and preparation were the keys. By calmly asking questions, doing research, and following up, he could turn a stressful situation into a manageable one. Little did he know, the journey was far from over. There were still more charges to review, more calls to make, and more lessons to learn about medical billing and standing up for yourself.
After his first successful call, James felt a mix of relief and curiosity. Relief because he had removed the incorrect lab test charge, and curiosity because he wanted to understand why medical bills were so confusing. He decided to take a closer look at the remaining charges. Some were straightforward, the doctor's consultation, the bandages and medications, but others, like emergency facility fees and administrative service charges, were vague. James realized these were standard fees that hospitals often include, and many patients don't even know they exist until they see the final bill. To make sense of it all, James researched more online and found articles explaining that hospitals have complex billing systems. Every visit is coded with multiple numbers, some mandatory, some optional, and sometimes mistakes happen. A single small visit could generate dozens of individual charges. James highlighted the ones he didn't fully understand and wrote them down. He wanted to ask the billing department for clarification. Some charges might be negotiable, while others were fixed by hospital policy. The next day, he called Karen again. "Hi, this is James," he began. "I reviewed my bill, and I'd like to understand a few more charges that aren't clear to me." Karen patiently explained each one, giving him details about why they were applied. Some were fees for using specialized equipment, while others were routine administrative charges. James realized something important. Even though the bill was expensive, knowledge was power. By asking questions, staying calm, and carefully reviewing the bill, he could avoid paying for mistakes and negotiate what was negotiable. By the end of the day, James felt more in control and less stressed. He understood that medical bills weren't just numbers, they were a system with rules, errors, and opportunities to advocate for himself. This lesson wasn't just about money, it was about being proactive, organized, and confident.
By now, James had learned a lot about his medical bill. He had removed the incorrect lab charge, understood most of the remaining fees, and even highlighted some that might be negotiable. But one thing was clear. He couldn't afford to pay $5,000 all at once. He needed a payment plan. The next morning, James picked up the phone again and called the hospital billing department. This time, he was ready to negotiate. "Hello, this is James. I've reviewed my bill and I'd like to discuss a payment plan or any options to reduce the balance," he said politely but firmly. Karen listened carefully. "Yes, we have several options," she replied. "You can pay in monthly installments, or we can review your account for any discounts or financial assistance programs you may qualify for." James took a deep breath. He didn't want to sound desperate, but he wanted to be honest. "I'm willing to pay, but the full amount at once is too much. Could we set up a plan that works for both of us?" Karen typed on her keyboard and offered a monthly plan with a low interest rate. She also mentioned that some charges could potentially be reduced if he applied for the hospital's financial assistance program. James asked for the details, wrote them down, and promised to send the necessary documents. After the call, James felt a wave of relief. For the first time since opening the envelope, he could see a path forward. The bill still existed, but now he had control over how to handle it. By negotiating politely, asking questions, and being prepared, he had turned a stressful situation into a manageable one. James realized this wasn't just about money, it was about standing up for yourself, asking the right questions, and staying calm under pressure. He felt proud of himself for taking action instead of letting panic take over. With a plan in place, he was ready to move forward and tackle the remaining steps, including submitting paperwork and ensuring the bill reflected the correct charges.
Even with a payment plan in place, James couldn't completely relax. The $5,000 bill still hung over him like a dark cloud, and the stress began to affect his sleep. Every night he lay in bed thinking about bills, rent, groceries, and whether he would be able to make the monthly payments. He realized that money problems aren't just financial, they're emotional too. The anxiety made him irritable at work, distracted during meetings, and even affected his appetite. He knew he had to find a way to manage both the bill and the stress it caused. To cope, James decided to organize his finances. He created a simple budget, noting all his monthly expenses and seeing where he could save a little money to cover the medical payments. He also practiced deep breathing and short walks to clear his mind when panic started to take over. While researching online, he discovered that many people had faced similar situations. Stories of others negotiating bills, setting up payment plans, or getting financial assistance made him feel less alone. He learned that asking for help whether from the hospital or friends and family, wasn't a weakness, it was a practical solution. James also started thinking about the lessons behind the bill. He realized how important it was to communicate clearly, ask questions, and stay proactive. Panic didn't solve anything, but careful planning and action did. By the end of the week, James felt more calm and focused. He knew the bill wasn't gone, but he had a step-by-step plan. Instead of feeling defeated, he felt prepared to handle what came next. This experience taught him a valuable life lesson. Facing challenges head-on with patience and persistence can turn a stressful situation into a learning opportunity. After days of calls, emails, and paperwork, James finally received confirmation from the hospital. The incorrect lab test charge had been removed, and the payment plan was approved. He felt a huge sense of relief wash over him. The plan allowed him to pay a fixed amount each month, making it manageable alongside his rent, groceries, and other expenses. For the first time since opening the $5,000 bill, he could see a clear path forward. James reflected on everything he had learned. The experience had been stressful, yes, but it had also taught him valuable lessons. Ask questions whenever something doesn't make sense. Document everything, notes, emails, and phone calls. Stay calm and polite. It often helps to get better results. Know your options. Financial assistance programs and payment plans exist for a reason. Feeling empowered, James realized that handling this bill was more than just about money. It was about taking control of a stressful situation, building confidence, and learning how to advocate for himself. He also noticed a change in himself. Where he had once panicked, he now felt capable. Where he had felt powerless, he now had a strategy. Even friends and family noticed that James seemed more calm and organized, ready to tackle any challenge that life might throw at him. By the end of the day, James allowed himself a small celebration. He had faced his fear, navigated a confusing system, and come out stronger. The medical bill was still there, but now it no longer had the power to control him. With the payment plan in place, James finally felt a sense of closure. The panic, confusion, and stress that had dominated the past weeks began to fade, replaced by a feeling of control and accomplishment. He thought back to the moment he first opened the envelope and saw $5,000 staring back at him. At the time, he felt shocked, overwhelmed, and powerless. But now, after calls, research, and careful planning, he realized that the situation had taught him more than just how to handle a medical bill. It had taught him life skills. James reflected on what he had learned. Knowledge is power. Understanding the bill and the system made him feel in control. Communication matters. Asking questions politely but firmly got him the answers he needed. Persistence pays off. Following up multiple times led to corrections and a payment plan. Stress can be managed. Organizing finances and practicing calm techniques helped him stay focused. Most importantly, he learned that challenges are opportunities in disguise. What had started as a panic-inducing emergency room bill became a lesson in responsibility, problem-solving, and self-confidence. He smiled, knowing he was now better prepared for the unexpected challenges of life. A simple visit to the emergency room had turned into an important life lesson. Stay calm, ask questions, and take control of your situation. He looked at his now manageable payment plan and felt proud. It wasn't just about money. It was about growing stronger, smarter, and more confident. And with that, he closed the envelope, took a deep breath, and moved forward, ready for whatever life might throw at him next.
And that's the end of today's story, The Medical Bill Panic. James's experience teaches us an important lesson.
Even stressful situations like a surprising medical bill can be managed with patience, clear communication, and careful planning. By staying calm, asking questions, and being persistent, he turned a scary problem into a learning experience. As you listened, you heard everyday English phrases, vocabulary, and practical conversations that you can use in real life. Remember to pay attention to how James expressed himself, asked questions, and negotiated politely. These are useful skills both for English and life. Now it's your turn. Check the quiz section in the description and try solving the questions to test your understanding of the story. This will help you improve your listening, vocabulary, and comprehension skills even more. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so you can learn more English through real-life situations. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next story.